Sonia.
And I'm Layla.
Welcome back to our segment, Superfood Sleuths,
where we investigate the health food aisle.
Today, we're going to talk about turmeric powder.
Don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss one of our videos.
I think I noticed a few years ago, the first time, on social media, all of a sudden, turmeric powder was being talked about a lot.
Yeah.
And I know, there are a lot of cultures in the world turmeric's been, a really important part of cuisine and health management for many centuries.
Millennia
even.
Yeah, but all of a sudden, we've been getting turmeric lattes. That's all I can really think of.
And just pills and supplements.
Yes, yeah. And it's everywhere, and it's never in the context that, all these other cultures have been using it in for so long. You could just have, a curry, but, no. You're gonna have an almond milk latte, turmeric in it. And I'm like...
Or take a pill every day instead.
Yeah. And, turmeric is delicious. In curry, it gives, a lot of the color and the, flavor to it. So... I don't know, we're going to try out a latte today and see how it goes.
Yeah, this one has coconut milk in it, so I don't know, I feel like it might be good. I'm optimistic about it.
I'll try it. I love coconut sometimes, actually. Sometimes coconut I'm not a big fan of.
I love coconut.
But I like fresh coconut, the young ones. So.
The water or the meat. I love the coconut meat.
Yeah, coconut is so good.
But
you can't really get it here.
You can't get it here. I don't think I've ever had it here.
Maybe we can start a business venture.
So
good.
Yeah, and drinking coconut water.
And then you finish your coconut, and then they cut it open, and then you use the little. At least I don't know. We use the the husk of the coconut to scrape out the inside
and eat it. It's an experience.
Good. It really is.
Experience.
On that note, it has coconut in it.
Yes,
but we're not talking about coconut today. We're talking about turmeric.
I forgot why we were here. I just started fantasizing about coconut. I really love coconut, honestly.
Okay, I think it really is a case by case basis.
Okay.
And I actually think I do prefer in savory foods.
The opposite there.
But turmeric, I think I also prefer in savory foods.
That I agree with. I think the world kind of agrees with you. I don't know what's going on with this particular product.
Right. But turmeric lattes are everywhere. And I find it so strange, they're touting on these health benefits and and kind of ignoring the fact that it's a very important part of a lot of different cultures, and it has been for a really, really long time.
There are billions of recipes where you could just buy the spice and use it, and you'd probably save a lot of money.
The turmeric plant.
It's part of the ginger family, and you can kind of see it visually. When you look at pictures of turmeric, it does look a lot like ginger.
Which I'm surprised that, the flavor is so different from ginger, because ginger has such a strong flavor. Turmeric has its own thing, but it's not at all related, but it looks so much like ginger. The part of the turmeric, so it's a whole plant, and the part you eat is... Oh my god, what's the name? It's
rhizomes.
A rhizome.
Actually, I don't know if that's how you pronounce it, but it's spelt as rhizomes. And that's basically, the underground stems. Kind of taken and either boiled or maybe just used fresh and dried, and then ground into powder.
Yeah, and that's how we get turmeric. And it has that really vibrant yellow color. Anything that's a fun recipe, it's golden, blah 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 blah, because it's this really rich gold color.
It's actually used in dyes, and interestingly, it's used in things like cosmetic products as well. The turmeric plant is actually native to the subcontinent of India and is also in Southeast Asia. So I think that in the history of turmeric, it's especially big in those regions. And in India specifically, it's been used in Ayurvedic medicine since 200 BC. And there's a lot of claims around turmeric, things like strengthening the body and improving digestion, helping regulate menstruation, dealing with gallbladder stones, as well as arthritis.
In India as well, outside of the Ayurvedic practice, it's used for, cuts and burns and helping skin conditions, as well as in some areas of Pakistan, it's used as an anti-inflammatory agent.
What's really cool too is that it's actually used outside of ingesting it too, and you mentioned things like wound care, but it's also used in a lot of traditional practices as well. For example, in Hindu wedding ceremonies, before the wedding, sometimes people will, like rub turmeric on the bride and groom, and it's supposed to be kind of like a blessing for the bride and groom for their marriage. And I was reading too, in Hindu culture, like a lot of times, like they'll apply turmeric powder to statues of gods and things. Mm-hmm. And actually, the color yellow itself has a lot of significance in Hinduism. It's supposed to symbolize things like learning and knowledge. So, turmeric, because of, it's a vibrant yellow color, it actually does get used a lot in a lot of traditional practices.
Oh, it seems like turmeric kind of spread all over the world, and us in the Western world have kind of been sleeping on turmeric because it went from India and Southeast Asia, spread across into more of East Asia, then into East Africa, then West Africa, then it was brought to the Caribbean, with indentured servitude of people from India. And that was like quite recent, being in the 1800s, but it's only really being incorporated in, I guess Western culture now.
Okay, are we ready to try it?
I am.
I'm kind of worried that it may have cooled down and possibly, I guess.
Honestly, it's pretty good. And I'm glad it cooled down a little bit because it was boiling water, and I'm glad that we didn't have like a little tongue burning moment. We're not. Oh, sorry. We're smelling. We gotta go through the process.
Okay. Yeah, don't worry.
Okay, let me just give it a little. It's really pretty on the inside.
I don't know if I consider this to be pretty. I will say, I was just gonna say, I think your mugs might be forever stained. I mean, we talked about this with the apple cider vinegar, but I don't think we want to swish this around our mouth.
Yeah. I didn't even think about that. About like teeth yellowing.
Actually, speaking of that, I know like in India, traditionally you eat with your hands, and obviously your fingers kind of come in contact with the curry and stuff, and especially if I have my nails done, like it will change the color of
that's
my nails.
So interesting. That's something I've never thought about, but it makes a lot of sense.
It's actually interesting too, because if I have like a blue nail polish and with the yellow of the turmeric, it turns green.
Beautiful.
Like it literally turns green, and it still looks nice. So yeah, and it smells mostly like turmeric, and I'm getting the hint of coconut as well.
To me, it's the same amount of coconut that's like in a Thai curry.
Okay, are we ready to drink it?
All right. Cheers. Let's go nuts. Oh. It's not terrible, but like, why would I want to drink this? Latte is a bit strong.
Latte is a stretch. I feel like just calling it a tea might be more appropriate. It's not bad. It's mostly just hot water. I'm getting mostly just hot water with that hint of turmeric. Although, to be fair, we weren't that careful I wasn't that careful with measuring out the water.
You know what would make this good is like if they put like some like ginger or something in it. Oh, there is ginger root powder in here. Oh, okay, so there's coconut milk powder, turmeric powder, coconut palm sugar, cardamom seed powder. Oh, they put cardamom, okay.
Ashwagandha.
There we go. Root powder, cinnamon bark powder, ginger root powder, and black pepper.
Wow, they really covered all their bases. I will talk about this later, but it's thought that black pepper might actually help improve the absorption of the turmeric. You know what? I'm kind of enjoying this.
I would drink this whole thing.
It's hard to, I'm also really hungry right now.
We talked about the significance of turmeric for Ayurvedic medicine and treating certain conditions in some places in the world like Pakistan and India. But, recently there has been a lot more attention in the effects of turmeric on different health conditions from like a Western lens as well. Yeah,
there's been a lot of, I think, curiosity around turmeric and inflammation, as well as like conditions that are considered inflammatory. A lot of the research on the health benefits of turmeric is actually done specifically on curcumin, which is a component of turmeric, and it's actually the curcumin that gives it that beautiful, vibrant yellow color.
This kind of started off in a in vitro model, which typically things like this do. And in vitro and also in animal studies, we do see good effects of turmeric on having an anti-inflammatory response. And there's a few different reasons why they think that this is the case. But one of the ways that they think that this works is that it kind of acts as an antioxidant in your body. So you've probably heard that word thrown around, like blueberries are antioxidant, goji berries are antioxidant. And basically what that does is it reduces oxidative stress on your body.
And it also seems like curcumin, specifically in animals, does reduce some inflammatory markers such as cytokines.
Looking at in vitro and in animals, we've seen these good results, and unfortunately, in terms of inflammation right now, based off of the research we have, it's kind of a little bit limited, the effect that we see on just general inflammation and inflammatory conditions in human beings.
And a huge reason for that is actually the bioavailability of curcumin in humans. So first of all, curcumin is kind of considered the main component in turmeric that may provide these health benefits. But unfortunately, curcumin only makes up about 3% of turmeric powder. So when you think about, like the amount of turmeric that might be used in, typical dishes and things like that, the amount of curcumin that's actually being ingested is actually quite a bit lower than, the amount of turmeric that you might be putting in a dish. And on top of that, the curcumin actually seems to have pretty low water solubility and intestinal absorbability. So the amount that's actually entering the body actually seems pretty low as well. And it seems some research shows that you would need about 3.6 grams of curcumin to actually notice a change in plasma level. So the amount of turmeric you would have to ingest on a daily basis would be substantial.
100 grams, which is like what you get in like a packet of turmeric.
So there is some question about, even though we're seeing a lot of promising results in animal research as well as, in vitro research with curcumin, isolated curcumin, how that translates to human consumption of turmeric powder, it is a little bit up in the air.
Inflammation also is something that there's just so many components to. So how are we measuring it? That all plays a role as well.
And inflammation is actually a really important function in our bodies. I think it's almost nowadays used exclusively to say something as if it's a completely negative thing. But it's actually, acute inflammation is actually necessary to deal with a lot of, issues that our bodies may go through. It's more, I think it's thought that nowadays that a lot of our bodies go through chronic inflammation.
And that's what can lead to certain disease states. Turmeric has been studied as well for its effect on gastric ulcers. And so there have been a couple studies done on this. And what they found is that having 30 grams of curcumin doesn't actually produce any benefits for getting rid of the bacteria that causes peptic ulcers or gastric ulcers in human beings. There was some promising evidence in animals, but they did find it's a good addition to the regular kind of therapies that they would do for people who have gastric ulcers. I do want to point out though, 30 grams of curcumin. That's quite a bit.
Next, moving on to arthritis. And though this was really interesting, it seems like supplementing with curcumin actually does reduce knee pain and improve physical function.
We're talking specifically about curcumin, but there are I think there's over 1,000 different compounds in turmeric. And so some of the research in this area has also been on other turmeric extracts, but there's not quite as much. And again, we see decreases in knee pain that is comparable to NSAIDs or non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, which is a fancy word for Advil. I think that's quite amazing because, those drugs can have side effects, especially if you're having something like chronic pain where you're taking many a day.
The fact that, the improvements in the physical conditions are comparable to those types of drugs, but without the side effect, that's pretty incredible.
One thing to know though with this research is that all the studies are super different, the type of turmeric they used, the amounts that they use, all these different things. And so, to really figure out what's the dose that we need, what's the type, what's the delivery method, that's where there's going to need to be a little bit more research done.
Another huge claim that's made about turmeric powder is that it may help prevent or delay Alzheimer's disease or, neurodegenerative disorders in general. And, I was telling Layla about this before, but it's interesting because when I was first moving out of my parents' home, I remember my mom very explicitly telling me to make sure that I add turmeric powder to all the dishes I make to help prevent Alzheimer's. So I know that this is like a belief that's very much out there.
And this question has been looked at quite extensively in the literature. They're kind of looking into the mechanisms of this. And so mechanisms for things like Alzheimer's are really hard to study because you can't actually see the effects until you do a brain dissection. And so, you know, that would require like waiting for people to die of Alzheimer's and then looking at their brains and all these different things. So animals are a really good model for this. But what they found in animals is one of the things that they see in the structure of the brain when it has Alzheimer's are these things called beta amyloid plaques. So it's kind of a protein that accumulates in your brain. And they found with differing levels of curcumin supplementation in, you know, mice and rats, there's increased clearance, so your brain gets rid of this more rapidly or quicker, and decreased formation of these plaques in your brain.
Another proposed mechanism is that curcumin might increase levels of brain-derived neurotrophic factor, and that's something that's thought to, you know, prolong the life of neurons, and it's kind of involved in learning and memory. And, you know, low levels of this brain-derived neurotrophic factor is actually implicated in things like depression and Alzheimer's. So it is thought that, you know, perhaps, you know, taking something like turmeric powder may help then slow down cognitive decline or help prevent or delay Alzheimer's disease. And this is kind of seems to be supported from an epidemiological standpoint because, you know, places like India that does consume high amounts of turmeric, there seems to be lower levels of Alzheimer's disease, which is very interesting. But I mean, at the same time, we do kind of have to take that, you know, with some caution because, of course, there could be so many confounding variables involved. And, you know, because lifestyle in general is very different in India compared to a lot of other places. And then there's also the thought of, you know, in terms of testing and access to, you know, adequate testing and things like that, there may just be differences in reporting that possibly might skew the numbers. A study done on cognitively healthy adults between the ages of 60 and 93 or so, I believe, and it was done in over 1,000 of those adults, and it was within an Asian population. It was found that those that had a lot of curry that had turmeric powder in it compared to those who rarely ever or never had curry, those that had more curry more regularly performed a lot better on what's an exam called the mini mental state examination, which is a very common exam that's used to kind of assess cognitive ability.
But, you know, when we actually look at studies into the effect of turmeric and curcumin on Alzheimer's and, you know, the way that the disease progresses, we don't really see any benefit. And again, as I mentioned, like, to do a study to see how it affects Alzheimer's itself, they'd have to like wait for the person to die, then cut open their brain, then do the like slides of the different parts of their brain and analyze it. So what they do instead is they look at the cognition and the cognitive abilities of people with Alzheimer's. And it seems like there's not really that big of an effect. And, you know, a lot of people think that, you know, even though we see in these healthy adults that in both epidemiological studies and in some control trials as well, we see improvement in cognition and things like mood and things like that. But the reason we don't see it in people with Alzheimer's is because maybe it's too far of a progression forward that there's not really anything that you can do.
And I think there might also be a factor of, you know, using turmeric or curcumin as a treatment, that, you know, that might be different than just lifelong consumption and dietary patterns that may kind of influence health outcomes.
Also, they've looked into turmeric and curcumin for dyslipidemia, which is like the medical word for like when your cholesterol or your like blood lipids are too high or kind of just off balance, kind of out of whack. And there's been quite a bit of research into this area.
Dyslipidemia is kind of used as a marker for risk for things like heart disease, which is, you know, the significance of it. And yeah, super interesting that, you know, turmeric powder or curcumin seems to improve a lot of those markers. So it lowers total cholesterol, triglycerides, LDL cholesterol, and seems to increase HDL cholesterol, which is what we want.
As with the other studies we talked about, there's a lot of like heterogeneity, or all these studies are just so different because this is kind of uncharted territory. And so people don't have like a standard method out yet, so they're kind of all trying different doses, different types. In the meta-analysis that I looked at, it showed that there actually was a dose effect of curcumin that you needed to have, and it was actually 1,000 milligrams. So that's a gram of curcumin alone, and as Rabina mentioned, curcumin is only 3% of turmeric. So it'd be quite a bit that you need to have every day to see a reduction. And also these studies aren't looking at like turmeric, the powder, they're looking at curcumin extracted from turmeric. So we don't...
Yeah, not only the curcumin extracted, but also kind of made into like a concoction that so that the bioavailability is improved.
There are a lot more studies that are looking in ways to improve that bioavailability even more, especially within the context of Alzheimer's, which we just talked about.
So you might be wondering if there's any risks to taking turmeric either like as a supplement or including it in your food, and great news is that not really. I mean, I think a lot of studies that were looking at doses of up to 8 grams of curcumin, which is quite a bit, like a lot more than you could ever get from just including it in your food. So there doesn't really seem to be any concerns.
In a few studies, there were some people who reported some stomach problems, so like, you know, nausea or whatever. And I think though that comes with really a risk of incorporating any new foods into your diet. And again, there have been people cooking with turmeric every single day for thousands and thousands of years.
So what are the takeaways? Turmeric powder has been used in cuisine as well as for other purposes for thousands and thousands of years in many different cultures. And, you know, in animal research, it is very promising that it may help with a lot of, you know, health outcomes. However, you know, in humans, the research is limited at this point, mostly due to the low bioavailability of curcumin and turmeric powder. But at the same time, I mean, it's delicious, and, you know, it's certainly something that you can add to your food if you wish, because there's not really any risks.
So I guess we have to move on to the ratings, which this is my favorite part.
It's our favorite part.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
I'm glad I didn't finish it yet. So we'll do smell first.
So
it smells tricky. It's
nice,
so tricky.
but I don't know if it's a smell I'd want for a drink.
It does remind me as well of like some sort of Thai curry. So it does smell really good. But is it a beverage smell? Maybe I'll give this a 5 out of 10.
You know, I think that's good because like if this was like a soup, if this was a soup, this would be a really good smell.
So, okay, 5 out of 10 for smell. We agree on that.
Yeah.
That's great. Then what? Appearance?
See, this is the thing, is I like the color, but it's just kind of like not really giving me...
Yeah, I don't know if you said this on camera or before we started filming. You mentioned it kind of looks like orange juice, like a murky orange juice.
Yeah, like a low quality, like from concentrate orange juice.
But like with other stuff in it.
So I actually think I'm going to give it a 4 for appearance.
I completely agree. It's a 4 out of 10.
What's next?
Taste.
I don't know.
You know, it's such a mild flavor.
Yeah.
But it's kind of nice.
If I was making a soup, I would just like pour this in there.
Yeah.
I think this could be a really good tea. I think it's missing a little bit of more ginger, maybe some acidity. Them calling this a latte,
I mean, you're stretching the word there.
Exactly. I would say I would drink this again. If this is one of the things that you sometimes when Rabina just leaves them at my house if she really doesn't like them. If you leave this at my house, I will drink it.
What are we talking about?
The taste.
I started thinking about, do I want to take this home?
I would give this a 6.
Really?
5.5.
I would rather drink this than most teas.
Oh my goodness. But you don't like tea.
I don't like tea,
Okay,
which is why I would rather drink this than most teas. But I would rather drink a lot of other liquids over this. I think a 5.5 is very fair.
Oh, we're like in sync today.
Yeah.
Really interesting to learn about the effects of like turmeric on inflammation, especially in the animal in vivo space. And it just shows like how much there is in like things that come from like the earth. So.
I do find it interesting too that, we talked about how turmeric has been used in medicinal practice for, thousands of years. And it was used without necessarily what would be considered, solid scientific evidence. But like now that we are doing the research, I mean, at least in animals, we are seeing what people may have just observed thousands of years ago.
Exactly.
I don't know.
It is interesting to see this, traditional wisdom now being studied. I'm like, I feel like if I was like an Ayurvedic doctor, I'd be like, I told you.
Yeah.
Told you. Yeah.
And one thing we were talking about too is that, you know, a lot of these studies are obviously, you know, short term, you know, in nature, and, you know, how does that compare with people that might be consuming it every single day their whole lives?
Exactly. So, we don't know.
Can an experimental study capture that?
Even how does, you know, turmeric interact with the other components of the diet? How does, you know, maybe having this level of turmeric but having more sun exposure? I don't know, all these different interacting parts. See how that kind of plays into things. Okay. Thank you guys so much for watching. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Hit the notification bell so you never miss one of our videos, and follow us on our and follow us on our Instagram and our TikTok. I've been struggling today. I don't know.
Thank you for watching.
Bye.